What's up, YouTube? Naeem here. Wanted to make a video demonstrating some results I got in a interesting little remote viewing experiment I did. I had a friend choose a target, and I worked this target blind. The only difference is this time I worked the target using two different methodologies against the same target. I want to do this to experiment and kind of show how different methodologies bring you to the target in different ways. So most people's common concept when most people hear about remote viewing or intuition or psychic functioning, especially the word remote viewing, they imagine having an experience where they see a very clear visual image, like watching a movie clip. So, like, for example, when I post my videos using CRV, a lot of people comment and say, how did you not see this, or how did you not see that? Well, hopefully this video will help explain that for people who haven't experienced this for themselves. And I encourage people to try remote viewing for yourself using CRV, using a structured methodology, so you can get familiar with how this information comes into the body and the mind. So we're going to look at the data that I collected against this target using an open CRV method, and then I'm going to show you the data that I collected using a method out of Hawaii that I learned from Dick Algar. So he's a remote viewer from Hawaii. So we're gonna jump into this, and I'm gonna kind of like break down the differences in the data. Both methodologies allowed me to produce good target contact, and good data, but different kinds of data. And there is overlap, but the form in which it comes through is different. And so hopefully you'll understand this through the scans here. So I got the sessions here, and we're gonna take a look at these. I'm gonna share these with you guys now. So before we look at the sessions, I wanted to show the target. So remember that I was blind while I was working these targets. So the paperwork I'm about to show you, I did not see this picture until after I completed this work. Someone else who was not in the room when I did the session selected this target and kept it hidden from me, and they created a 8-digit target identifying number, which in this case is 42GT-HLI1. So someone assigned that target identifier to this specific image, and they gave me only the target number. So here's the image that was chosen for the target. It's the events that happened on 9/11, specifically the towers burning, the explosion that's happening in the background behind the bridge was the target, was the task. We're going to take a look at this CRV session first. All right, the open CRV session. This was the target that was selected. The buildings, the burning buildings in the back were the focus of the tasking. The target number was 42GT-HLI1. And so I worked this blind in this CRV session here. So beginning with the ideogram, you can see that here I have an A aspect, B aspect, and a C aspect. And basically, in the first stage, you're identifying the main gestalts of the target. So I basically ended up, after this first stage, I ended up with the information that there's life at the target, like people, life. Um, they're traveling. Um, some people enter in a structure. There's some kind of sudden change that happens, and this is in the higher altitude, higher up, above or top area. So life, sudden change, above or top. For the structure, I had gray, black, angular, vertical, ornate, man-made structures, and I had some, very brief visuals here that passed through my head, passed through my mind's eye, and you can see the visual representations matching to the target structure. And then I had a C aspect, which is energy, and I said gaseous, white, bright, puffy, explosive. I had an AOL of an explosive cloud, and you can see I drew a little cloud here. So stage 1, using the ideogram, I was able to extract, kind of like pull out the main aspects of the target. There's a structure, there's life, something happens in a higher altitude area above, and there's an energy event associated with that. Moving on to the stage 2 sketch. CRV, sometimes the images that you sketch, or, it all depends on how much time and effort you're willing to put into these sketches and drawings. They're not meant to be pieces of artwork. They're meant to be quick visual representations of ideas, sketches, ideas that you just jot down, because it's more important to probe them for more information. That's what's more important. So in stage 2 in CRV, you do a sketch of the target. So I produced this sketch here, a very crude drawing. It's not pretty, but essentially what it means is that there's life, there's a structure, and there's an energy event. And I sensed that it was explosive. There's a loud rumble, and there's an energy release. It's in an urban area, and it happens near the top, some type of top area above. So this is a very, if someone said, hey, I'm going to use my psychic abilities or my intuition to describe something for you, and you targeted them 9/11 or, this explosive event, and they drew something like this, at first glance, you'd probably think, okay, that's, this is stupid, just stop. But what's important in CRV is the gestaltic shapes and forms and the information that you get from them. That's what's more important in CRV. You can get very, very detailed data producing very crude drawings like this. You could still nail targets in CRV. So that's what I mean by, it's not exactly you're not exactly seeing this like a movie in CRV. You know what I mean? You're getting bits and pieces of information. You're working with your body to sketch out ideas and concepts and work through them. You got to be willing to make mistakes. That's how this works. So the next stage in CRV is the S4 matrix. This is where we start extracting more detailed information, higher level concepts. We can move around the target. So I had a sense of witnessing something epic or major. There was emotions of panic, frantic, excitement, overwhelming. There's a sense of anticipation. I was getting conceptuals relating to a corrupt agenda, a plan, an overt plan to excite the public. And I had an AOL here of terror attacks 9/11. So I ended up naming the target on page 3 of my session using CRV. And as you can see, I haven't, besides these images, these quick sketches on page 1 and this crude sketch here, there's not much data visually that would allow someone to say that this is 9/11, but it's the conceptual nature, the intangibles that you get when you probe using CRV that can really set the tone and give you a sense of what's going on. The sense of corruption, a plan, an overt plan. that's what made me feel like this is a nefarious type plot. And then, you know, the explosive event near the top of a structure, in my mind, that felt like, okay, this is reminding me, you know, AOL of 9/11, the terror events. So you can see very small pieces of data. I didn't say there's a bridge. We're in New York City. You know, it didn't happen like that. Uh, it's like I said, it's like navigating through a file system. You know, you got to dig through a bunch of things that you don't really know their importance. Like, for example, if you go into an application that you use on your computer and you go into the actual file folder of that application, there's going to be a whole bunch of files in there that you don't even know what they're for, what they do, because you know you might not be a programmer, you don't know how applications work. So getting data in CRV can feel like that. You're blind, so you don't know what's important. You don't know what's right or what's wrong or what goes where. So you kind of just got to keep pulling on these threads of data. And, you know, if you pull on them the right way, you can end up, you know, you can end up in a good place describing the target. So moving on to the next page, I did a movement order. So I cued myself to move to the structure of interest and describe it in detail. So I probed for colors. I had tan, shiny, hard, brownish, metal, hard, spaced evenly. And I got an AOL of World Trade Center 7. And when I probed the tangibles column, I got a very rectilinear structure with these vertical, even spaced vertical aspects to it. The AI here, the ambiance was like a business core, like Wall Street type feel. I wrote there. And the intangibles related to this structure and this event felt like political access, like an overthrow, some type of political event. Informationally speaking, conceptually speaking, I had good data in regards to the target. You know, emotions, the panic, frantic, excitement, overwhelming, some kind of overt plan to excite the public. It was fright and panic. I had good visual representations of the towers. I had business core, things like this. These are good data points that match the target. Visually speaking, not so much visually speaking. You know, I had a couple of good drawings of structures, but no real. I didn't really make an attempt to try and capture the whole target area. So this was a very much an in and out type session with a couple good sketches of the target structure and some conceptuals, but did lead to, you know, naming the target. So now we're gonna take a look at my S2 sketch here. Sorry, my S3 here in CRV, and I'm just gonna bring up an image of the New York skyline, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the Trade Center towers from a slightly different angle. So here's the target photo. Here's just a slightly different angle, so you can kind of see the layout of how this is. So sketching the main target aspect, this is my sketch, structure, energy event, life, some kind of movement. And here's the actual target area here. So very crude representations, but still able to glean information that's relevant to the target. So now I'm going to jump over into my other session that I did. I worked the same target blind using a different methodology, which I learned from remote viewer Dick Algar, who's a, you know, really great remote viewer. You could check his stuff out. Crypto Viewing is his channel, a project that he's working with right now. So using this alternative methodology, I'm just going to break down how the data comes through in this methodology. And this is the methodology that's based more on capturing visual images. So as I just went through the CRV session, there wasn't much visually to work with. I had some small instances of visuals that came through, and I sketched them, but it wasn't really based on getting the visuals. It was more about the ideograms, intuitive sketches, and working things out, feeling things out. This methodology is a little bit different, and you're going to see the differences here in a moment. So here are some ideograms that I produced. This methodology is still using ideograms to get contact with the target. That's a tried and true part of remote viewing. A lot of the best methodologies that allow for good target contact usually use an ideogram to get you there. So now we're going to move on to the data collection. So this is like the S2 area in my CRV session. This is like S1 and S2 right here. So in this method, we collect visual images, and then we get the associated sounds, smells, and tastes, temperatures, and textures associated with the visuals. So this information moves across this way, so to the right in rows. So all this data is pertaining to this visual. This data is pertaining to this visual, so on and so forth. So as you can see here, all my visuals here, we're looking at just shape and form, overall shape and form. These all have structural elements, right angles, straight lines. When I see a visual like this working a session, I know that I'm dealing with structures at the target site. So I had sounds of horns, voices. I had textures of connected. This bridge, connected. I had a sense of something was extended and connected. And here in my second visual, you can see a long path connected to some other structures, which is this bridge, the shape and form of this bridge coming through in the visuals. Hard structures, verticals. So a lot of structural elements I was getting at this point in my session. So we move on to stage, what's called S2 in this protocol. And we're doing the same thing again. We're collecting visuals and associated sounds, smells, tastes, temperatures, and textures. But we're also doing it at a deeper level using a little bit of NLP recall. So here I had visuals of structures, sounds of hissing, and tat 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 sounds, cloudy, airy textures, smells and tastes, warm. I had a texture of these vertical spaced elements on a structure, and I blew it up right here. This is a larger representation of what I saw in that probe. So I saw a structure with vertical spacing with this shroud of darkness and cloud right, a little bit down from the top. This is what I saw. Blew that up. That was this drawing right here. This last column over here is kind of like an AOL or a column where you just write what you think this data means. So I just wrote structure, some kind of structure here. Again, another structure, a thudding sound, smells and tastes of cloudy, gaseous, hot temperatures, a very hard boxy structure, more of these verticals I was seeing. Again, more verticals, sounds of hissing, vertical struts. I got the sense of vertical struts. More vertical protruding metallic structure. So, whereas in CRV, we got the main gestalts in that first ideogram, that first page. I determined there was life, structure, and an energy, some type of energy at the target. Using this secondary methodology, it's not until after these two data collection matrices that we are able to identify what the gestalts are. So after seeing all these visuals, well, I know that there's structures, there's some kind of air type gaseous aspect to it,
Um, there's horns. I had horns and voices, so I know there's people at the target. So there's life, there's structure, and there's gaseous, airy thing. So those are the three aspects that I know were at the target. So the S3, the site sketch, which is like the S2, the S3 in CRV, where I'll pull it up here for a second. This part right here. So this is like, this is where, this is the difference between my laying out the gestalts in my CRV session and laying out my gestalts using this other methodology that's based on gathering visuals. So you can see this is a very crude drawing that had the basic gestalts in it. This is a more complex drawing, more visually appealing, more accurate. As you can see, here's a image of the target site beside my S3 sketch. And as you can see, I have the long structure going across and a bunch of different man-made structures along the side. Boxy angular structures. I had my airy gaseous gestalt here. So structures, airy gaseous, and life, voices. So now the next stage in this protocol is to isolate the gestalt and to actually get a visual look at this gestalt. So CRV doesn't really have a protocol that's tailored for this type of contact. Like, I still named the target, I was still able to get some visual captures of the structure, but this methodology is based on that. This is the anchor point. Once you get the visual, from the visual we pull the conceptuals. Whereas in CRV, you're free to pull conceptuals, probe wherever you like. You have a little bit more freedom in CRV in the beginning of collecting the data. So looking at the life, isolating the life gestalt, this is the visual that I saw. I saw a crowd of people, crowded people bunched up together. I heard sounds of yells and screams, worry and panic emotions were the emotions of the people. Like, oh my God, people yelling, oh my God. The sense of people wondering, like, explosive, like, was that an explosive? So this was a visual image that I saw in my mind's eye, closing my eyes, seeing this visual. And then looking at the air gaseous aspect, this was a very, very clear visual that I saw. This was like a very short, maybe like a 4 or 5 second movie clip that I saw in my mind's eye, looking on Blackboard. Up high, I was up high in altitude near the top of some, tall structures, and I saw this explosion happen. This explosive release happen near the top of these structures, and I wrote sudden release near structures, smoke cloud. I probing for recall on kinesthetics. I got emergency, explosion, energy release, textures of chalky white, cloudy chalky white, sounds of screams and yells. So this was a very, very clear image to me that I saw, which was like a movie clip. So two different methodologies worked against the same target. I hope this kind of helps people to understand that there's different ways of collecting data. We're very complex. We have different inputs and outputs in our body and in our mind system, our information processing systems. And the different methodologies are just different ways of organizing and putting these things together. And it's really just which tool works best for you. What are you more comfortable with? some of these visuals are very similar. Here's one of the drawings that I had in my CRV session, and here's one from my my visual remote viewing session. Still was able to pull the emotions of panic, overwhelming anticipation, yells, screams, worry, panic. You know, explosive. I had explosive, clouds, cloud. The same information is coming through, just in different forms, different ways of collecting, different ways of displaying. The CRV methodology doesn't exactly give you a protocol to display that visual image long enough for you to get a good grasp on it, whereas this methodology is more tailored towards attaining that visual image and then recalling information about that image. So I hope this was interesting and maybe helped people trying to learn remote viewing or people who are interested in this phenomenon, kind of how this information comes through, how it manifests in a session. And as being a viewer blind to the session, it's, you know, it can be very confusing, and it usually requires, you know, a small team to really get to solve something using remote viewing. You usually want to work with a small team, you know what I mean? Someone who can retask you, send you back into a session, and clarify, rework things, because it is very tedious. You know, it can be very tedious work. It's not easy, and yeah, hopefully this helps, you know, explain a little bit of the differences between methodologies. And it's more about our innate intuitional abilities. We all have these abilities. These are all just different tools that we use to harness them. So yeah, thanks for watching, and if you guys like this, please subscribe and comment. Questions, I'm happy to share more information, and yeah, thanks for watching. Take you guys next time. Thanks.